Since the National Hockey League started giving out the Conn Smythe Trophy for playoff MVP back in 1965, only 6 players have ever been awarded the trophy as a member of the losing team. And before Connor McDavid won it last year in the Oilers series loss to the Florida Panthers, there had only been one man to receive the award since 1987. That man was a goaltender by the name of Jean-Sebastien Giguere, who did it while playing for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks in the 2002-03 season. After getting drafted by the Hartford Whalers in 1995 in the first round 13th overall, JS ended up playing just 8 games with the Whalers before getting traded to the Calgary Flames in 1997. He'd spend the majority of the next 3 seasons in the American Hockey League with the St. John Flames, developing his game before the organization traded him to the Anaheim Ducks for a 2000 second round pick that turned into Matt Pettinger. The Ducks joined the NHL as an expansion team during the 1993-94 season and had made the playoffs just twice in their team's 7-year history to that point. Jiggy would play half of his first season in the AHL with the Cincinnati Mighty Ducks and the other half with the big club in Anaheim. The 23-year-old netminder showed a lot of promise that first year, and with new goalie coach Francois Allaire giving him loads of confidence and really changing the way he looked at the position, it became evident that Giguere could become a real difference maker in the cage for Anaheim. In the 2001-02 season, the Mighty Ducks were the 6th worst team in the league, but Jean-Sebastien had an incredibly strong season in his first year as a starter, finishing with a .920 save percentage and 2.13 goals against average in 53 games, both which were top 10 in the league. The next year, the Ducks entered the season with a new bench boss, Mike Babcock, who was set to start his first tenure as an NHL head coach, after spending the previous 2 seasons with the AHL affiliate in Cincinnati. On paper, the Mighty Ducks didn't look like much. They had their franchise superstar Paul Kariya, but outside of him, their other top scorers were Peter Sikora, Steve Ruchin, and a 40-year-old Adam Oates. And when you put this lineup against some of the other powerhouses in the West, it was hard to imagine these Ducks as a playoff team, let alone a cup contender. But thanks to another standout season in net from J.S. Giguere, where he finished 7th league-wide in save percentage and 2nd in shutouts, the scrappy, defensive-minded Anaheim Mighty Ducks made the playoffs as the 7th seed in the Western Conference, and their reward was a matchup with the defending Stanley Cup champion, Detroit Red Wings, who were the top scoring team in the NHL that year, and boasted a lineup filled with future Hall of Famers including Sergei Fedorov, Brett Hull, Brendan Shanahan, Nicholas Lidstrom, and even a young Pavel Datsyuk. Although Anaheim went into the series as heavy underdogs, Giguere and the Ducks had other ideas and would do something that no one could have predicted. In a defensive battle in Game 1, both Giguere and Red Wings goalie Curtis Joseph duked it out in a triple overtime thriller, Jiggy stopping 63 of his 64 shots faced before Paul Kariya ended it early in the 3rd extra frame. And despite getting peppered with shots each of the next 2 games, JS stopped 70 of 73, helping the Ducks take a 3-0 series lead. In Game 4 in Anaheim, the Ducks were again outshot by Detroit, but Jiggy was stellar yet again, saving 32 pucks before Steve Ruchin scored the game winner in overtime to help the Ducks sweep and shock the defending Cup champs. In Round 2, the Ducks would have to face another juggernaut, the Western Conference's #1 seed, the Dallas Stars. In a similar fashion to Game 1 versus Detroit, Game 1 versus Dallas was an absolute thriller that needed 5 overtimes. Giguere and Stars netminder Marty Turco both put on a show, Jiggy with 60 saves and Marty with 50. And finally, just under a minute into the 5th overtime, known clutch scorer Peter Sikora won it for the Ducks. Anaheim won another overtime game on the road in Game 2, and in Games 3 and 4, Giguere let up just 2 goals, helping his team take a 3-1 lead in the series. In Game 5, the Stars fought back, winning 4-1, allowing just 15 shots against and scoring 3 goals on 19 shots against Giguere, showing that he was indeed human. But in Game 6, although neither goaltenders were perfect, Sandis Ozolinsh scored 1 late in the 3rd for the Ducks, and they'd take the series in 6 and head to the Western Conference Final. The Ducks were set to face off against another team that was an underdog heading into the postseason, a Minnesota Wild team that also relied heavily on their defensive play and goaltending, and were coming off of 2 Game 7 victories in Round 1 against Colorado and Round 2 against Vancouver. The Mighty Ducks put on an absolute clinic in this conference final, shutting out the Wild in the first 3 games, including a 1-0 double overtime win where Peter Sikora scored the game winner. They finished the sweep in Game 4 with a 2-1 victory, and Jiggy was as close to perfect as a goaltender could possibly be in this series, stopping an unbelievable 122 of the 123 shots he faced. In the Stanley Cup Final, the Ducks would run into a New Jersey Devils team in the midst of what many would call a dynasty. At the tail end of the dead puck era, Giguere would be going head-to-head with one of the greatest goalies of all time, the Vezina and Jennings Trophy winner, Martin Brodeur. Anaheim was shut out in Games 1 and 2 by New Jersey, both times losing 3-0, and both times Martin Brodeur pitched 16 save shutouts. The Ducks battled back at home, taking Games 3 and 4, both in overtime, and in Game 4, Jiggy posted a 26-save shutout. In Game 5, the Devils handled the Ducks, getting 6 past Giguere on 37 shots, 2 of them from Jamie Langenbrunner. And in Game 6, now back at home again, the Ducks forced Game 7 in an iconic game with an iconic and infamous moment after Scott Stevens knocked out Paul Kariya with a blind hit, leaving him unconscious on the ice. But after Kariya came back into the game, he ended up ripping a slap shot, and Gary Thorne gave what many would consider to be one of the greatest goal calls in hockey history with his off-the-floor on the board call. In Game 7, the Devils shut down the Ducks one final time, winning 3-0, with Brodeur getting the last laugh, stopping 24 shots. Although New Jersey would win the Stanley Cup, Jean-Sebastien Giguere's playoff performance in 2003 was one of the greatest single performances by a goaltender in NHL history. He led all goalies with 659 saves on 697 shots for a ridiculous .945 save percentage. He also had 5 shutouts and became the first Conn Smythe Trophy winner on a losing team since Ron Hextall in 1987. A few seasons later, in the 2006-07 season, the Anaheim Ducks, with a much more well-rounded team, with studs including Teemu Selanne, Andy McDonald, Scott Niedermayer, Chris Kunitz, Chris Pronger, and a young Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry, had a chance to win the Anaheim Ducks' first championship again. And with Jiggy again between the pipes, the Ducks went all the way back to the Cup Final, this time to meet up with the Ottawa Senators, and they took them down in 5 games. Ducks defenseman Scott Niedermayer won the Conn Smythe this time around, but Giguere was now on the right side of history and finally got his redemption after putting on one of the best performances by a goaltender in NHL history back in 2003, on a run with the Mighty Ducks that can only be described as magical.